Hi, I'm Brittany and welcome to my channel. In this video today I'll show you how I paint this fall watercolor wreath. So first off, I want to apologize for not filming this in landscape mode. I filmed it in portrait mode because I was making an Instagram reel, but I still wanted to make a little YouTube video out of it to show you my process of painting this wreath. I'm using my Canson watercolor paper and it's cut out to the size 8 inches by 8 inches. And then I've just made a little circle to know where my wreath is going to go. I'm starting this wreath by painting these larger light colored leaves, and then after these dry we'll go on top of them with smaller darker leaves. This is a mixture of my Aureolin yellow and yellow ochre, and I'm painting these leaves in 2 strokes. I push down and pull up, and then on the other side push down and pull up and meet at the point. Again, I just push my brush all the way down, and then on the other side I push it down and pull up and meet at the point. Now while these leaves are still wet, I'm going to drop in a mixture of Scarlet Lake and Indian Red. I like to drop in the color at the tips of the leaves and the bottom where it meets the stem, and then just let the colors blend together on the paper. Now I'll turn my paper and find another spot to paint these yellow-orange leaves. I'm planning on painting these larger leaves in groups of 3 around this wreath. I'll repeat the same process and speed this up a little bit so we can move on to the next step. Alright, now we can move on to our next set of leaves, and I'm going to choose a bright yellow-green for these ones. So this is a mix of my Aureolin yellow and a touch of Sap Green. I'm going to paint the same size and shape of leaves as the yellow-orange ones. While that paint is still wet, I'm going to take my Sap Green and just dab it around in random places throughout the leaves. Now I'll turn my paper and repeat that process 2 more times. Next, I'm taking a mixture of my Winsor Red Deep and Indian Red, and I'm going to paint some smaller leaves between the green and the orange leaves. I'm using a size 6 round brush for this, and you can see I'm using the tip and not pushing down as hard to keep these leaves smaller. And instead of just 3 leaves per branch, I'm going to do about 5 or 6. I'm ready to turn my paper and find some more white space to paint these reddish leaves. Now I'll add some burnt umber to that red to make it a bit darker, and I'll paint some smaller leaves off these little branches, and I'll have a couple of branches sprouting off from each other for these. Since this red is much darker than the yellow-orange color, don't be afraid to layer on top of it so it looks like these leaves are on top of the others. Now I'm just going around this painting and looking for white spaces to fill in these little red leaves. Okay, now I'm moving on to these bright yellow leaves, and they're the same as the leaves that I painted at the beginning, just a little bit smaller. Pushing down my brush and meeting at the tip and making these little leaf shapes. I'll grab some darker yellow ochre and drop this in to these wet leaves. Again, I'm just looking around this wreath and filling in the gaps with these yellow leaves. Now moving on to my next set of leaves, I'm picking up my dark Perylene Green and painting these leaf shapes and filling in any of the white areas that need more leaves. Since this is a really dark color, I'm just going to paint straight over this red leaf and make it look like my green leaves are layered on top of them. Moving around the wreath, I'll fill in these dark green leaves wherever there are gaps and spaces. It's looking like I need more filler leaves here, so I'm going back to my light yellow color. And I'm just going to keep adding these leaves until the white space is filled up. I want some more dark leaves, so I'm taking a mixture of burnt umber and a touch of my Indian red, and I'm going to paint some of these brown leaves throughout the whole wreath. This brown color is darker than that light green color, so I'm just going to go straight over that leaf and not worry about it. I'll pick up some dark burnt umber and drop that into this wet paint. Now I'm just looking around the wreath again and finding empty spaces to plug in these brown leaves. I thought it would be fun to add some little wheat stalks, so I'm just going to make a little stem. And then with the tip of my brush and really light pressure, I'll make these little tiny strokes to make it look like the top of a wheat stalk. I'll drop in some darker yellow ochre while that paint is still wet. These are great little filler plants to stick between the white spaces of the leaves. So I'm just going to go throughout this whole wreath and add a bunch of these little wheat stems. Now I just want to add some little red berries throughout the wreath, and then I think I'll be finished. I start with a dark mixture of my Winsor Red Deep and Indian Red to make my first berry, and then in a bit lighter wash I make the second berry. For my third berry, I'll rinse off all the color and just use water and touch it into that wet berry and let the paint and the water run together. I'll continue to add these berries throughout the wreath, and then I think I'll be close to being finished. Alright, now that the berries are finished, I'm going around the wreath and looking for spots that are sparse, and I'll just fill it in with any of the leaves that I've painted so far. After looking around, I've decided to grab a really dark Payne's gray color, and I'm going to paint them anywhere that I feel like needs some filler and paint them over the leaves underneath. All right, now that the wreath is looking full enough, I'm going to move on to my very last step and take my less than a size 0 brush to make these little tiny veins on the orange yellow leaves. And that's all there is to it. It really is a pretty simple wreath when you take it step by step. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you so much for watching.